I guess in a way this video is about progress more than anything else. Just been thinking about this a lot lately, and I watched a video recently on one of my subscribers' channels. Feel free to argue. Zach was talking about military bases, and he had a really great idea for how to shut those down. And it just got me thinking about this other idea that I had about education and how it should be a lifetime process. And like in the current model of public education, kids, they go to school for a certain number of years, and then the government just sort of kicks them out on their own. And if they graduate, or if they don't graduate and they leave even earlier than that, it's kind of like they're finished with education unless they choose to go on to college. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because in one way education can be really bad. It can be like programming, and it can be damaging to minds by forcing people to conform to broken systems or ideals. But in another way, education is critical for people. They need education if they want to advance, and that's kind of relates to this theme that I wanted to make this video on, which is progress. So how do you scale systems that currently work yet are maybe failing or unsustainable? How do you change them so that or how, more importantly, how do you change people and their minds so that they can adapt to a future where maybe those old ideas are no longer acceptable, and yet at the same time you don't want it to be like a horrible traumatic experience for them to adapt, because that would sort of negate the whole purpose of society. Society's all about security, and you can't really have security if technology is turning a bunch of people into refugees, or intellectually or otherwise. So these are kind of my thoughts on that whole subject matter. I think ultimately there has to be some kind of a facility or fixture in society that its sole purpose is to eliminate the education / information gap between generations. Like, for example, the previous generation to my generation, there are certain thoughts and themes and ideas that exist in their minds that they serve their purpose, but now in this present age, in this era, those ideas need to be phased out. They're simply not going to be acceptable, and they're quite clearly impractical for any kind of a real pragmatic future that our species really wants to have. Ideas like using fossil fuels, for example, ideas like clear-cutting forest to grow crops. I mean, there are just so many ideas that really just need to be phased out if we intend to have any kind of a real future. And the problem with that is that for many of the people in the previous generation, those ideas are almost inseparable with their own thought process or themselves. It's like they identify with them so strongly. Like an idea like filling up the tank, or Wall Street. These ideas are so firmly ingrained into our culture and into our psychology that it's really almost impossible to imagine a life without them, especially for people who I know who are like older than I am. And yet for people like me, it's quite clear that these are things that they have to come to an end if we're going to have any kind of a future, you know. So I think that there is a necessity there for some kind of institution, you know, whether it's public education or some kind of more privatized type solution. There definitely has to be something there that bridges the gap, that, you know, teaches people who are used to the idea of like fossil fuels as being indispensable. They need to be educated that there are better solutions, that there are superior solutions, and that those solutions are practical and can be used now. But more than just being educated about those, they need to be shown that they need to be educated in such a way that they can see the bigger picture, so that they can realize the continuity and the fact that time, you know, and progress are interrelated, and that there comes a point where they have to realize that they need to give up certain things in their lives that, you know, they identify with or that they're nostalgic about, that they have to let those go so that their children and that their children's children will be able to live in a world where they don't have to be in constant fear of losing their security or their lives or their health because of bad decisions that were made in the past. And I know there's a lot of like sort of attachment to these old world concepts, you know, that they've worked for a long time and they've, you know, in one sense industrially served us very well, but for everything, you know, a time comes to an end, and there's a better, you know, solution, and that is the essence of progress. We need solutions that are superior. We can't just continue to depend on these old models and expect them to last forever, because just like our economy, and growth does not go on forever, indefinitely. There's always going to be a limit, you know, and like a plateau. And people need to accept that. They can't continue living under this delusion, this constant delusion that certain things can just go on indefinitely, because they can't. And, you know, I hate to say it, but that's kind of a maturity issue. And if that's the truth, like pretty much the majority of the business and political and industrialized world is, you know, about intellectually about the age of a 5-year-old, which is, I think, pretty pathetic, all things considered. So those are just kind of my thoughts on that. You know, I don't know as far as the practical or pragmatic side of how you would implement something like this, but I think there is a definite need for this kind of institution that would help to bridge that gap and to educate people, not just at one point in their life and then set them free, you know, put them on their own, but to actually go with them every step of the way through their entire lives, to make sure that not merely that they can remain productive members of society like they most likely want to be, but so that they can actually have some sort of stock in a real future, you know, a continuum, basically, that all of us are a part of. And well, that's pretty much all I have to say on that right now. I think I don't think there's really any farther that I can go. So I'm just gonna throw that out there, and you know, what will be, what will be. As always, thanks for watching.